The wind hit me first. Cold. Sharp. The kind that cuts through your jacket like it's nothing. I stood there with my suitcase, that old brown thing Miriam used for our trip to Colorado back in '98, watching my son's taillights disappear into the airport traffic. The car was gone in seconds. Just like that. 35 years of my life, and I got a 5-second goodbye at baggage claim. My name is Harlan Dwyer, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I built my entire life with my own 2 hands, only to have my son take it away in a single afternoon. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. I'm the one who handed him the blueprint. I didn't come from money. Not a penny. Started out with nothing but a hammer, a high school diploma, and a stubborn belief that hard work actually meant something in this country. 35 years of carpentry, welding, fixing roofs for people who'd never remember my name. Blisters. Broken bones. Back pain that never goes away. I did it all because I thought I was building something that mattered. I thought I was building for my family. Before you keep watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you think you know about trust. If this story makes your blood boil, let me know in the comments. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The worst part. I'm not even angry at him anymore. That's what really scares me. I watched him pull away, and all I could think about was the folder. That stupid folder sitting in my suitcase, tucked under my travel papers. The one thing Trent didn't know I'd changed. The one thing that was about to save my life, or destroy what was left of it. Because standing there in that airport, freezing cold with nothing but a suitcase and a plane ticket to somewhere I didn't want to go, I realized something. The man who drove away wasn't my son anymore. He was a stranger wearing my son's face. And I had to figure out if I'd created him, or if life had just twisted him into someone I no longer recognized. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to when things were different. Not better necessarily, but different. I was maybe 28 when I met Miriam. She was working at a coffee shop near the job site where I was framing a new office building. I'd walk in every morning at 6:30, order black coffee, and watch her smile at customers like they were family. One day she asked my name. 6 months later, we were engaged. 2 years after that, Trent was born. I remember holding him in the hospital. This tiny thing, barely 7 pounds, with 10 fingers and 10 toes and a future I was determined to build with my bare hands. Miriam looked at me from the hospital bed and said, "He's going to be something special, Harlan." I believed her. I believed everything back then. The years went by fast. Too fast. Weekends were for the 3 of us. I'd take Trent to job sites, let him hold tools that were way too heavy for him. He'd ask, "Dad, when do I get to build something of my own?" That question killed me every time. Because I was already building for him. Every single day. Every callus on my hands was for him. Miriam was the heart of our house. She made everything warm. Even when money was tight, and it was tight for most of those years, she had this way of making ordinary nights feel like celebrations. Birthday cakes from scratch. Homemade Christmas ornaments. She remembered everyone's favorite foods, their stories, their dreams. Then she got sick. Cancer. The kind that doesn't ask permission before it shows up and ruins everything. I watched the woman I loved disappear in increments. First her hair. Then her strength. Then her smile became something she had to work for. Trent was 17 when she died. Old enough to understand. Too young to handle it. The funeral was gray and cold, just like that airport day. People came and went, said things that meant nothing. But I remember Trent standing by the casket, pale and hollow-eyed, and he whispered something to me. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of you now." That was the moment I should have seen it coming. because promises made in grief never stay the same shape. About 18 months after Miriam passed, Trent showed up with someone new. Vanessa. She stepped out of their car like she was walking onto a red carpet. Sharp clothes, sharp smile, sharp everything. She had blonde hair pulled back tight, the kind of face that costs money to maintain, and eyes that looked at my house like it was a real estate listing. "Dad, this is Vanessa," Trent said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. "We're partners. In business and, well, everything." Vanessa extended her hand. "Mr. Dwyer, what an impressive home. Trent's told me so much about you." Her grip was firm. Practiced. The grip of someone who learned how to shake hands from a self-help book. I didn't like her. Not right away. But I told myself I was being unfair. Trent had been alone since his mother died. If this woman made him happy, who was I to judge? That's what a good father does. He lets his son grow up and make his own choices, even when something in his gut screams that something's wrong. They started visiting more. Every couple of months they'd drive up from their place 2 states over, always dressed like they were heading to some important meeting. They'd sit in my living room, the room Miriam had decorated, where we used to watch movies together, and Vanessa would talk about opportunities, and expansion, and government contracts. Trent nodded along like she was teaching him the secrets of the universe. Then came the comments. Small ones at first. "Dad, you know you've spent your whole life working. Don't you ever think about actually enjoying yourself? Or, have you thought about what you're going to do when you can't work anymore?" Or my favorite, "That house is too much space for just one person, isn't it?" Each question had a hook in it. I just didn't realize I was the fish. Looking back, I can see exactly how it happened. Every visit was a test. Every question was softening me up. Vanessa would catch Trent's eye across the dinner table, and they'd exchange these looks that made my skin crawl. But Trent was my son. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe he wasn't being manipulated, or worse, that he wasn't doing the manipulating himself. One day about a year ago, Trent called. His voice was different, excited, urgent, like a kid who'd figured out how to get everything he wanted. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." "Big news," he said. "Can we come by this weekend?" That Saturday, they showed up with a folder. Tan-colored. Professional. The kind of folder that looks important even when it's not. "Dad, sit down," Trent said, and Vanessa smiled that practiced smile of hers. "We're expanding the company. We've got a chance to secure a government contract. Something huge. The kind of thing that sets us up for life." "That sounds great, son," I said carefully. "It is. But there's one problem." He paused, letting the tension build. "The bank wants collateral. Something solid. Something that proves we're serious about this." I felt my stomach drop. "What kind of collateral?" "We just need to use the house temporarily," Trent said, sliding the folder across my coffee table. "Just put it up as security for a few months. Once the contract comes through and we get the loan paid back, we'll transfer it back to your name. It's just paperwork, Dad. A formality." I stared at that folder like it was a snake. "You're asking me to put my house up as collateral for your business?" "Not really put it up," Vanessa chimed in. "More like, present it as an asset. The bank just needs to see that you're confident in our success." Trent leaned forward. "Dad, it's guaranteed. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't sure. And think about it, when this goes through, the money we make will set up your grandkids' future. You'll be part of building something real. Something that lasts." The phrase hit me like a hammer. Something that lasts. As if what I'd already built, the house I paid for with 35 years of my hands bleeding on job sites, didn't last. As if my life's work wasn't enough unless I made it bigger for him. But he was my son. And he looked me in the eye and said, "You're part of the plan, Dad. Please." I asked to have a lawyer look at it. An old friend named Omar Kent, retired attorney, came by the next day. He read through the papers, and when he looked up at me, his face had changed. "Harlan, this isn't temporary," he said quietly. "This is a full property transfer. If you sign this, the house becomes his. Legally, completely. There's no automatic reversion clause. Once you sign, it's gone." But Trent had been so confident, so sure. And Vanessa had mentioned that I could add protections if I wanted to feel safer. So I did. I had Omar add a clause, something quiet, something sneaky, something Trent didn't know about. The clause stated that if Trent's business failed to maintain financial stability within 12 months, full ownership reverted back to me. Everything. The house. Any improvements. All of it. I signed. And with that signature, I set a trap I didn't know I'd need until it was far too late. Months passed. Then more months. I'd call Trent asking about the contract, and he'd give me vague answers. "It's in motion, Dad. These things take time. The government moves slow." Every excuse I'd heard before but wanted to believe anyway because believing meant I hadn't made a terrible mistake. The calls got shorter. Then they stopped coming altogether. I'd reach him and get voicemail. I'd text and get responses 2 days later. Meanwhile, I started getting mail. Bank statements addressed to Trent. Letters from contractors. Mortgage documents. My house, the place where I'd raised my son, where Miriam and I had built our life together, was turning into something else entirely. One day, I drove 2 states over to see what was happening. I parked down the street from what used to be my house and watched contractors working on the outside. They were replacing the front porch. The one Miriam and I had painted together on a Saturday afternoon. They were tearing it down like it meant nothing. That's when I knew. Really knew. Trent had moved in. He and Vanessa had set up their lives in my home like I'd already died. My stuff was still inside, boxed up in the garage. I could see it through the side gate. Boxes with my name on them in Miriam's handwriting, shoved aside to make room for their renovations. I called him that night. "Trent, what's going on? When are you moving out?" "Dad, we need to talk about this," he said, and his voice was cold. Professional. Like he was reading from a script. "The house is ours now. We've made some improvements. We've invested money. This is our investment. That's my house, Trent. Not anymore." 2 weeks later, he called with an offer. A proposition. A way out that wasn't really a way out at all. "Dad, here's what I'm thinking. You've worked your whole life. You deserve a break. Take a vacation. Go somewhere warm. We'll book you a flight, our treat. Just give us some space to figure things out here at home." The way he said, "at home," made it clear. This wasn't an invitation. It was an eviction dressed up in kind words and a plane ticket. The wind hit me first. Cold. Sharp. The kind that cuts through your jacket like it's nothing. I stood there with my suitcase, that old brown thing Miriam used decades ago, watching my son's taillights disappear into the airport traffic. The car was gone in seconds. He'd driven me here with a smile on his face. An actual smile. Like he was dropping me off at summer camp instead of kicking me out of my own home. The whole drive he kept saying things like, "You'll love it, Dad. Sun, sand, relaxation. You've earned it." His hands were relaxed on the steering wheel. Confident. Like a man who'd already won. When we pulled up to baggage claim, he helped me with my suitcase. Actually helped me. Like nothing was wrong. Like we weren't standing at the place where he was about to erase me from my own life. "Have a great trip," he said, pulling me into a hug. It felt normal. It felt like something a son would do. But his grip was loose. Casual. The hug of someone just going through the motions. "When should I expect to come home?" I asked him. He didn't answer right away. He just smiled and said, "We'll figure it out, Dad. Enjoy yourself. You deserve this." Then he hugged me one more time, walked back to the car, and drove away like I was already gone. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just holding my suitcase, watching the space where his car had been. Around me, families were reuniting. Kids were screaming with joy. People were rushing toward planes, toward futures, toward somewhere. But I was standing still, frozen in the moment when my son officially made me homeless. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger exactly. Something colder than that. Something that felt like clarity. I reached into my suitcase and pulled out the folder. The one they'd given me a year ago. The one with all the paperwork. My fingers found the page Omar had helped me add, the clause hidden in the legal language like a time bomb waiting for the right moment. I read it again, even though I'd read it 100 times. The reversion clause. The safety net I'd quietly added. The insurance policy Trent had no idea existed. And I thought about something else he didn't know. Something I'd been monitoring for months. His business was failing. The suppliers were unpaid. The contracts were falling through. I'd done my research. I'd talked to people in his industry. I'd watched his company crumble from a distance, all while he and Vanessa kept pretending everything was fine. They had maybe weeks left before it all collapsed. Standing there in that airport, watching families reunite all around me, I realized the trap had been set. I just didn't know I was the one who'd built it. I bought a ticket for 2 days later. Didn't want to seem too eager. Didn't want to rush back and tip my hand. I needed Trent to think I was somewhere tropical, somewhere without cell service, somewhere I could be forgotten about for a while. So I rented a hotel room in the airport for 2 nights, sat in the dark, and waited. The first night, I got a text from Trent. Landed okay. Just that. No warmth. No actual concern. Just proof that he was checking to make sure I'd actually left. I didn't respond. On the second night, I pulled out the original deed documents and sat with them under a hotel lamp. I traced my finger over the signature. My signature, from a year ago. That was me. That was the man I used to be. The man who trusted his son completely. The man who signed away his house because he believed in family. Then I looked at the clause. My addition. The words Omar and I had worked out together. In the event that the property holder fails to maintain financial stability within 12 months of transfer, full ownership reverts to the grantor, including all proceeds, assets, and improvements made to the property. It was beautiful, actually, in a cold kind of way. It was like laying a trap and hoping the animal was stupid enough to walk into it. And my son had walked right in. He'd taken the house. He'd renovated it. He'd made it theirs. And every dollar he'd spent, every improvement he'd made, was just tightening the noose. I'd had Omar explain it to me, word by word. If Trent's business failed, when his business failed, the clause would activate. Everything would revert. The house. Any improvements. Even the money they'd invested. It would all come back to me. By the time I got on that plane to come home, I knew something else. I knew that Vanessa had left him. I'd seen it in the local business news. A key partnership dissolved. A company founder working alone. The details were sparse, but the implication was clear. She'd abandoned ship before it went down. Trent was alone in my house. Alone with his failing business and a legal document he'd never bothered to read completely. I landed at the airport near my home at 3 in the afternoon on a Thursday. I didn't call him. I just drove straight to the house. My house. The front porch was gone, replaced with something modern and cold. The garden Miriam had planted was still there, but it was overgrown, neglected. There were 3 cars in the driveway, contractors, probably, or creditors. I sat in my truck for an hour, just watching. And then my phone rang. It was Trent. His voice was different. Shaking. Desperate. "Dad," he said, and I could hear panic underneath every word. "The bank froze our accounts. All of them. Vanessa. Vanessa left yesterday. She took everything we had in the business account and just left. The house is being repossessed. Dad, did you change something in the deed?" I smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not even an angry smile. Just a smile. The smile of a man who'd been waiting for this moment for months. "You should have read it, son. You taught me that trust is paperwork." "Dad, what are you talking about? Please, I didn't mean to." "I know," I said softly. "Neither did I." And then I hung up. I watched his car pull into the driveway 15 minutes later. He drove like a madman. Screeched to a stop. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, looking at me standing there by the mailbox like I was a ghost. "Dad," he said, and his face was white. "What are you doing here?" "Coming home." "No. No, you can't. The house is. We have a situation. We need time to." "The clause," I said. "The one you never read. It's activated." I could see the moment he understood. The moment his face went from confused to devastated. His knees actually buckled a little. "You put a clause in the deed?" "I did. Without telling me." "You didn't tell me the original deed was permanent," I said. "We were both keeping secrets, son." He sat down right there on the driveway. Just sat down on the concrete like his legs had given out. "What happens to me now?" "You figure it out. The way I figured things out after your mother died. The way I figured things out after you left me at the airport with nothing." I walked past him toward the front door. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Behind me, I could hear him crying. Not angry tears. Broken tears. The tears of a man who'd just realized he'd lost everything. But I didn't turn around. The sheriff's notice went up the next morning. I didn't have to do anything. The law did it for me. Within a week, the house was legally mine again. Everything inside it. Every renovation they'd paid for. Every dollar they'd invested. All of it belonged to me. I had the locks changed. I brought my things back from the garage. I stood in my living room and looked around at a space that had been transformed and then restored all in the course of 12 months. Trent came back once. Just once. He looked like a different person. Thinner. Hollow. His eyes had the look of someone who'd woken up in someone else's nightmare. "Dad," he said, standing in my driveway. "You're my father. You can't just throw me out." I turned to look at him. Really look at him. And I realized something. I was still looking at my son. But my son was already gone. This was just the shadow he'd left behind. "You tore down what mattered most," I said quietly. "I'm just collecting the debris." He left that night with nothing but a suitcase and the same arrogance that had ruined him. I watched him drive away from my window, and I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. I felt like I'd won a game that never should have been played. The weeks that followed were strange. I walked through rooms that still smelled like Vanessa's perfume and Trent's ambition. I touched walls they'd painted. I stood in the garden and pulled out the dead plants, replanting what I could save. One morning, I found a letter on my table. It was forwarded mail. From the county courthouse. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. A birth certificate. Trent and Vanessa's baby. A daughter. She was born 3 weeks before everything fell apart. The letter had a photo attached. Trent holding a newborn, the kind of smile on his face that I hadn't seen since his mother was alive. He looked happy, proud, like a man who'd found something that mattered. On the back of the photo, in handwriting I recognized as Trent's, it said, "Can we start over?" I held that photo for a long time. I stood in my kitchen, the kitchen where Miriam used to bake, and I stared at my son's face and my granddaughter's face, and I didn't know what to do. I never answered that letter. I never called him back. I just put the photo on my mantel, next to the pictures of Miriam, and I let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger, the betrayal, the loss. But underneath all of that, something else. Something that felt like recognition. Because I understood, finally, that Trent hadn't been trying to hurt me. He'd been trying to escape. He'd looked at his life and thought it was too small, and he'd done terrible things trying to make it bigger. I'd done the same thing once. When I was young and hungry and believed that more was always better. But I learned something that my son had to learn the hard way. The things that matter most aren't the things you can own. They're the people you build them with. And when you lose those people, when grief breaks you or ambition corrupts you, all the houses in the world can't fill that hole. I still live in this house. The one I built my life around. The one I signed away and then fought to get back. The garden Miriam planted still blooms every spring. I tend to it carefully, the way she taught me. Not because it's mine, but because it reminds me of what I almost lost. And every time the wind hits my window, I remember that cold airport. I remember my son's car disappearing. I remember the moment I realized that betrayal doesn't destroy you if you're paying attention. It educates you. Trust is not love. Love is not ownership. And sometimes the most important thing a father can teach his son is how to lose everything and still know who you are. I look at that photo of Trent and his daughter almost every day. One day, I think I'll call him. Not to forgive him. Not yet. But to tell him that I understand. That I know what it feels like to want more. That I know what it feels like to fail. And maybe, if I'm lucky, he'll be ready to listen. If this story shook you to your core, if it made you feel something real, then do this for me. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on those notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Share this in your comments. Tell me what you think. Did Harlan do the right thing? What would you have done? These stories matter because they're true. They're about real people. Real betrayals. Real hearts trying to find their way home. And they only reach the people who share them. So share this. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Let them know there's a place where real stories are told with respect and without judgment. Because the world needs to hear these stories. The world needs to know that forgiveness is possible even after betrayal. That healing is possible even after heartbreak. That we're all just trying to figure out how to love each other without destroying what we build. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this family of storytellers.